the science.
Suffices that the blood of 1,000 men and women was spilled in these walls. Limbs twisted and broken, eyes gouged from bloody sockets, flesh burned black.
Please. No way to death. In death, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes. What you have to realize is that we're all just a mouse that a cat has by the tail.
The number you have reached, 911, has been changed to a non-published number.
Warning, the following show contains conservative posturing, radical Christian ideas, and may offend pagans, Wiccans, Islamic fundamentalists, and other unenlightened individuals. Callers and guests may be subjected to brash and offensive comments by the hosts and any other type of bullying tactics available. But that's okay. We know why you're here.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
Tonight is Monday, February 26th, 2007.
Hello, world. This is Trent Lackey.
Hey, this is D, the answer phone king.
The answer phone key. This is a welcome to World of the Unexplained. Listen, guys, Scott is at his bar exam. Not at his bar exam, but he's in Raleigh preparing for the bar exam that he's having tomorrow. So he's not going to be on the show tonight, though I'm fairly certain that he's going to call at least one time.
You know he is. He's going to check up on us.
Yep, of course. Listen, guys, the chat room on the website, there's some trouble with that. You need to go omnisoundradio1.net and click on Omnisound Chat and log in there if you want to get into the chat room. We'll be repeating this message later on in the show. But for now, tonight, we are very pleased to have a highly esteemed anthropologist, ethnobotanist, writer, world traveler, extraordinaire, Wade Davis. I guess we'll just we'll throw him up right now. Wade, are you with us?
Hey,
Yeah,
Wade.
I sure am, you guys. Nice introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, D, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Wow, put me on the spot right away.
Yep, I know.
See. A question I have for you, as far as your book, The Serpent and the Rainbow. What made you want to write this book? I mean, was it just through your travels you just decided that you wanted to write this book about what's happening or what's going on in Haiti and around the world as well?
No, actually, I mean, all these things are kind of magical moments that come to you in your life. I had been working at Harvard as a graduate student studying shamanism in the Amazon and mainly working on medicinal and hallucinogenic plants of the shaman's repertoire. And I was fortunate to be the student of one of the great plant explorers of the 20th century, the sort of legendary botanist Richard Evans Schultes, the man who sparked the psychedelic era with his discovery in 1938 of the so-called magic mushrooms in Mexico.
Wow.
Right.
And I had worked with him since I was a kid, and he was really both a mentor and almost a father figure to me. And, I learned very early in my career to, whenever the great professor summoned me to his office with an idea, I only had one word in my vocabulary, and that was yes. And in the early winter of 1982, he called me forth to his fourth floor eyrie, and he very casually asked me if I was interested in going down to Haiti, infiltrating the secret societies, and attempting to secure the formula of a folk preparation that was said to be, quote-unquote, used to make zombies. Now, I didn't know whether he was just going off his rocker or whether he was on one of his weird medications from the Amazon. But it seemed to me like a very strange assignment, and I reflexively said yes, thinking at the moment that it would be perhaps, a paid vacation in the Caribbean during a miserable Boston winter, but I didn't think much of it, but having no idea that, of course, in the end it would consume 4 years of my life. And the genesis of the project was actually quite interesting. There was a really legendary psychopharmacologist. Psychopharmacology is the study of the action of drugs in the brain.
right.
And
Okay.
this man, Nathan Klein, who was really illustrious, he had won 2 Lasker Awards, which are the American equivalent of the Nobel Prize. He was a man who had been going to Haiti for many years. In fact, the Psychiatric Institute there was both established by him and therefore bore his name. And he had worked with NASA, and he was sort of the man who had revolutionized psychiatry in the 50s by suggesting, and in fact destroying, the hold that Freud had on psychiatry by suggesting that some psychological or psychiatric problems could be chemical, and that it wasn't about what your mother did to you. It was perhaps just an imbalance of chemical in your brain.
Right.
And he was the one who sort of, liberated psychiatry, and he was the one who, for example, brought Thorazine onto the market and all these interesting drugs. And, of course, once they got into clinical practice, they were abused. So he was sort of a controversial figure, but it wasn't really his fault. But the bottom line was that he had worked in Haiti for 30 years, and he had a colleague at McGill University, Heinz Lehmann, who had a student in Haiti who was now the head of the Psychiatric Institute. And all of these guys were interested in this whole question of the Haitian zombie. Now, a zombie by folkloric definition is living dead. It's an individual who's been sort of brought to their end by sorcery, by folklore, passed through the grave, only to sort of emerge into an uncertain fate, a fate that invariably is said to involve some kind of incarceration and slavery and some kind of, horrific destiny.
Right.
Now, they weren't interested in the folklore of zombies. They were interested in the possibility that was suggested by both the popular literature, the ethnographic literature, that, throughout the last 150 years in Haiti, there had been so many reports of so-called zombies, individuals who had, been diagnosed dead and then somehow had returned to the realm of the living, that they felt these reports, at least collectively, demanded an investigation. And in all of these reports was the reference to a folk preparation, a preparation that was said to bring on a state of apparent death so profound that it could fool a physician. And in fact, that folk preparation, or that drug, was accepted with such assurance, its existence was accepted with such assurance by the Haitian government that it was specifically mentioned in the penal code of the country.
Right, okay.
And yet, incredibly, nobody had ever gone down to Haiti to try to make sense out of sensation and to see if there was anything to this drug pharmacologically.
Right, okay.
And then what happened? Is that one of their prime student, a man called Lamarck Douillon, who was Haitian, had worked at McGill University with Heinz Lehmann, then went back and became the head of the Psychiatric Institute, was intrigued by this phenomenon because he knew that there was a series of plants in Haiti called concombre zombie, the zombie's cucumber, and he had been investigating these plants, and these were daturas, which are in the potato family, highly toxic. Jimson weed is how we know it in America. And
right.
These are the hexine herbs of Europe. And he thought maybe that was the source of the poison. But nobody had managed to actually secure the formula of it. But what Douillon, to his undying credit, did do is that he identified the first medically verifiable instance of a zombie. Now, this was an individual who, by chance, had been diagnosed dead in the Albert Schweitzer Hospital, a philanthropic institution led by the Mellon family, which, amongst its many fantastic assets, it keeps impeccable medical records. And this man, Clairvius Narcisse, had entered the hospital. His death had been recognized or reported by 2 physicians, both highly trained, one an American, one a Haitian. The Haitian trained in an American medical school. His death had been witnessed by a family member who put her fingerprint on a death certificate, and it seemed like a closed case. But this man, who had been declared dead in 1962, suddenly turned up in the realm of the living in 1980.
Right.
Turned back up into his village. And the interesting thing that occurred was that his family didn't deny that it was the deceased brother. On the contrary, they were fully prepared to recognized that this was our brother come back to life, but they were so angry at him that they wanted nothing to do with him, which is interesting.
Right. Now, is this the brother that you're talking about in your book that they were fighting over like the land disputes or whatever?
Well, that comes much later.
Oh, okay.
That was, that's what we've yes, you're right, but the fundamental question at that point in the investigation is that this was this incredible discovery, because Douillon, as a trained psychiatrist, trained physician, began to investigate. He was able to get, for example, the death certificates. He was able to go to the community and interview all the family members, and none of them had any. And he was also able to construct a series of questions that only someone from that family could have known. And this man, Clairvius Narcisse, was able to answer all of these questions. And so all these lines of evidence, including forensic examination of the fingerprints by Scotland Yard, together with the idea that in Haiti there was no incentive to perpetrate a fraud. I mean, a zombie in Haiti is a complete pariah. No sooner would someone pretend to have been a zombie than would a leper stand up on Hyde Park Corner in London and
right.
flaunt his disease. All of these lines of evidence led Douillon and Nathan Klein and Heinz Lehmann to go public on the BBC in, I think it was 1980-81, saying that they weren't casting judgments, but they had found the first medically verifiable instance of a zombie. In other words, this was a man, they didn't care about the magical beliefs or the mythological foundations of the phenomenon. All they cared about was, here was a guy who clearly had been diagnosed dead in a Western hospital and had turned back up in the realm of the living.
Right.
And they didn't believe in magic, so there had to be a pharmacological basis, and that drew their attention to this folk poison, which had been so widely reported in the literature.
Okay.
So my assignment was to go down to Haiti and try to find out if that preparation existed and what were the ingredients of it. And that's what my initial assignment was in the spring of 1982.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see where to go from here. You found out, of course, that in your book you said that the I guess I'm kind of jumping to the chase here, but you found out that the poison was a I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Something called tetraditoxin. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, this was the incredible breakthrough. You know, the most important thing you do, you guys, is when you take people at their word. You go down and you just, without judgment, you just see what they're putting into the preparation. And it turned out that the preparation that I initially collected in a Bokor, or negative priest temple, a man called Marcel Pierre, over Easter week of 1982, I brought that back to Harvard, and there were plants, there were a plethora of ingredients: dried toads, Bufo marinus, the most toxic toad of the Caribbean. There were lots of poisonous plants, but I remember I wasn't looking for a poison. There are lots of poisons that come from nature. I was looking for a drug that could make someone appear to be dead, and yet in such a profound way that it would fool a Western-trained physician, and yet that person could return to the realm of the living. So I wasn't just looking for an ingredient in the preparation that could kill, because lots of things can kill, plants, animals, all kinds of things. I was looking for something with this rather unique pharmacological attribute. Now, when I came back to Harvard, and again, I cast no judgments. I knew nothing about voodoo. I simply documented empirically what the people put into the poison. Now, I can tell you in a moment how I was able to get to that moment where they were prepared to show me that formula. That's a different story. But the preparation itself, I came back, and it's really kind of funny because I came back through JFK Airport on Easter Sunday, 1982, and I don't think this would happen in a post-9/11 era.
Right.
But I had this suitcase made of surplus 7-Up tins that had been printed in Saudi Arabia that I had picked up in the Port-au-Prince market just to have something to carry all this stuff back home.
Right.
And it was filled to the gunnels with dried fish, dried toads, dried human skulls. I mean,
right.
all the ingredients of the preparation. And I didn't have any permissions from permits from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and what could I do? So I went up to this customs guy, and I just said, look, here it is. I'm from Harvard, and he opens this thing. He slams it shut, and I won't tell you exactly what he said because we, after all, are on a radio program.
I can imagine.
He said, it's Easter effing Sunday. I didn't even want to effing work today. I don't know who the F you are, but just get the F out of here. And that's how the zombie poison first came into America. And then what happened is, of course, then what happened is I took all these ingredients back to Harvard. I identified the plants. I found out the plants had lots of toxic ingredients in them, but nothing that could do this critical thing, make someone appear to be dead, but then they could come back to life. And I was kind of crestfallen because I'd run down the various lizards and, the invertebrates. I'd run down the plants. I'd run down the toad, the amphibians. And then I finally went down to the basement of the Museum of Comparative Zoology to the ichthyologists, the fish experts.
Right.
And I kind of said sadly, well, did you find anything on those fish? And literally there was a researcher who had his head at the moment inside the jaw of this massive fish. And he sort of it was like a scene out of a movie. He lifted his head out, hit the upper teeth of the fish, irritatedly pulled his head out of the mouth of the fish, and leaned over toward the shelf that was, for the most part, filled with journals of ichthyology and various academic publications. And he reached behind one of them, and he pulled out a little paperback, which turned out, and I can't remember whether it was from Russia with Love or Dr. No, but it was an Ian Fleming novel, and he opened it up, and he read the last pages to me. And these were the pages whereby 007 gets kicked in the shin by a bad guy, and he dies. And then at the beginning of the next book that was also read to me, he comes back to life. And what the ichthyologist was showing me was that, in fact, the fish that I brought back from Haiti was quite unusual. It was from an order of fish called the Tetratodontiformes, hundreds of species around the world, mostly in the tropical areas,
right,
that have in their viscera, in their ovaries, on the surface of their skin, the most powerful nerve toxin ever found from nature.
Oh, okay.
Its name is tetrodotoxin. It's about 40,000 times stronger than sodium cyanide. It's 180,000 times stronger than cocaine as an anesthetic.
Wow.
A lethal dose would balance on the head of a pin, but more interestingly was the way that it killed. It was a big molecule that selectively blocks sodium channels in the nerves, bringing on peripheral paralysis, dramatically low metabolic rates, and yet consciousness was retained until the moment of death.
Right.
And because these fish were so well known, nothing to do, of course, with Haiti or with voodoo or with zombies, but because in Japan in particular, but throughout the South Pacific, they had been eaten, there was a huge literature on what this fish could do to you if you weren't careful. There was, for example, in Japan, the famous tradition of the preparation of fugu, whereby you had these carefully licensed and trained chefs who eliminated the toxic organs from the fish, but
right,
still prepared these dishes of sashimi, and whereby the non-toxic fillets would be dipped into a puree of the toxic organs. And the whole idea was that the connoisseur of fugu would achieve a kind of pleasant, mild intoxication. It was sort of a substance that walked the line between food and drug. But
right,
because it had been used, these were different species of the fish that were found in Haiti, but the same order of fish, and of course all of them had this incredible molecule or chemical in them called tetrodotoxin. And so we knew from the Japanese biomedical literature just what happened to someone who had an excessive dose of this toxin. There were, in fact, cases upon cases in the Japanese medical literature of people who had accidentally, of course, in circumstances completely unrelated to Haiti, succumbed to the toxin. They had been nailed into their coffins by mistake, and they had come back into the realm of the living.
Oh, wow.
In fact, by folk definition in Japan, if you succumb to this toxin, you're laid out by your grave for several days to make sure that you're really dead.
Oh, wow.
And so there was this huge popular literature that left absolutely no doubt that tetrodotoxin, again, totally unrelated to what was going on in Haiti, if administered in the correct dosage, could not only, of course it could kill, it could be sub-threshold and have no physiological impact, but there was definitely a dosage at which point the person would be manifesting all the symptoms of death and yet would be able to return to the realm of the living. In fact, we know that pharmacologically the way that tetrodotoxin works is that a crisis is brought on and you have about 6 hours, and if the dose is low enough, you can readily survive the toxicity, return back to the realm of the living, rationalize the experience as a terrible thing that happened to you by accident.
Right.
However, if you get an excessive dose, you literally die. But the key thing in all of this is that this correlation with the Japanese biomedical literature allowed you to make sense out of sensation. It allowed you to say, wait a minute, here's the situation. We have now identified a raw natural product in Haiti that has been recognized by the sorcerers and used by them, a fish that we know that at certain times of the year not only can make someone appear to be dead, even though that person returns to the realm of the living, but has done so many times in the past.
Right.
So this was either an incredible coincidence or there was something going on here. And so that initial discovery in Easter week of 1982 opened vistas, ethnographic, metaphysical, pharmacological vistas of incredible interest, and forced us then to go back to Haiti and really say, what is the foundation of this notion of the Haitian zombie?
Right. Okay. Wow.
I guess I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I guess I have a follow-up question for this. We only got about 5 minutes for the break, so how do you believe the voodoo Bokor, you call them, and maybe the secret society, which apparently hold the keys to the zombie poison, how did they come across using this fish? I mean, did they realize it was a fish?
That's a really great question. I mean, one of the things that we as ethnobotanists or ethnobiologists are doing all the time is asking, how the heck do people figure these things out? The classic example of that would be in the Amazon, for example, with the preparation ayahuasca, which is sort of the great vision vine, the vine of the soul, the most powerful hallucinogenic plant of the shaman's repertoire. And what makes ayahuasca so interesting is that it's not a plant but a combination of plants. So on the one hand, it has it's a woody vine called Banisteriopsis capi, and it's also the leaves of a nondescript shrub in the coffee family called Psychotria viridis. Now, the leaves of that shrub have a series of very powerful tryptamines in them, which are related to brain serotonin. These are powerful psychoactive agents, but they cannot be taken orally unless taken in conjunction with because if taken orally, they are by circumstance, they're denatured by an enzyme found in the human stomach called monoamine oxidase.
Right.
So they can only be taken orally if taken in conjunction with something that inhibits the activity of that enzyme. And the curious thing in the case of ayahuasca is the fact that the woody liana, Banisteriopsis capi, has other chemical constituents, harmine and harmaline, beta-carbolines, that are MAO inhibitors of the precise sort necessary to potentiate the tryptamines found in the shrub. So the result is a kind of a powerful synergistic effect, a biochemical version of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts.
Right.
But the interesting question for science is, how the heck did the Indians figure this out? How, in a flora of 80,000 species of vascular plants, did the indigenous people learn to combine these two morphologically distinct denizens of the rainforest in this curious and powerful way to create this psychoactive potion of the shaman's repertoire? And of course, the scientific explanation is trial and error, which is very quickly exposed as a meaningless euphemism.
Right.
You ask the Indians, they say the plants teach you. Well, what does that really mean? And of course, the answer is that there's a different way of knowing based on cultural experience in the Amazon. So, whenever we think about how these things are discovered, we always pay attention to the fact that, peoples who are focused on these areas of importance, they make their own discoveries. Now, in the case of Haiti, it wouldn't be that complicated in the sense that this was a fish gathered from the waters of Haiti and that someone could have noticed what the poison did at some point in the past. But the bottom line is that the manipulation of these preparations is generally at a level of sophistication that is daunting to the scientific imagination.
Right, okay. Now, I've heard before that there are some drawbacks for when they use this, like it's a. Oh, I'm sorry. What? I guess we want to
go ahead and ask your question. I mean, he'll get back to it after the break.
Like where if they, well, of course, if they use too much, the person dies, and then if they use the right amount, they come back. Is there also like a dude, since it does have like a psychotropic kind of thing? Does it actually sometimes when the people come back, has it actually just really messed their minds up to where the fact that they can no longer function?
That's a key interesting question, because of course the use of any drug, two things. I mean, first of all, Paracelsus, the great Greek scholar, said the difference between a poison and a medicine and a narcotic is just dosage. So as plant explorers we're always looking for any plant or animal that has biodynamic compounds in it, that activity that we can manipulate and hopefully adapt in useful ways for the modern pharmaceutical industry. But the other kind of axiom of this kind of research is that the use of these substances is firmly rooted in culture. So, for example, when I came back having identified the fact that there was a drug in the fish that could do what was exactly necessary for this phenomenon to occur, that was only the very beginning of the research, because then you had to ask the question, what is a zombie in the Haitian mindset? What is the psychological matrix in which this belief is unfolding? What are the forces that could mediate the chemical possibility? And then finally, of course, who's controlling the phenomenon? So in the identification of the constituents of the folk preparation over Easter of 1982 really was just the beginning of the research that would then span another couple of years.
Okay, excellent. Well, listen, Wade, we have to stop for our first break.
Sure.
And then we'll come back and we'll talk.
Are you fascinated by the possibility of extraterrestrial existence? Do you read, collect, or look for anything that involves UFOs? Look no further than theUFOstore.com. This website has the largest selection of UFO products on the internet. Log on to theUFOstore.com and you'll find over 100 video documentaries and DVDs. Register to receive the UFO Store's free newsletter. Log on to www.theUFOstore.com and experience the universe of UFOs.
And we're back, World of the Unexplained, talking to Wade Davis tonight. Okay, numbers. First of all, call Wade Davis. Fantastic, very interesting, very informative. The numbers are 1-877-722-7382 or 1-877-SCARE-U2. Now, the local number is 336-996-1596. And also a word on our chat room. You're going to have to go to OmniSound Radio 1net. I don't know what's going on with KarmaCast. We've been working on it a little bit before the show. Go to OmniSound Radio 1net. Go to OmniSound Chat. Log in. Put a username and some kind of password or whatever. And that's where we are. And it seems like a couple of people are having trouble finding that right now. So just a heads up on that. D, go ahead and talk about the tours.
Oh, yes. Make sure you come out to and see us at our Out of Darkness tour, which is June the 9th in Greensboro, North Carolina. Who all are there guests we're having? We're having
Schneblin,
Bill Schneblin,
John Zappis, Al Prophet,
Laura Placeris. Who else am I forgetting? Scott, of course.
Us.
Us.
Terry Baines, Actual Factual Dracula. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know. It's my job. Dropping the ball, Trent. Way to go. Way to go. If I forgot somebody, I'm sorry. And Paranormal Cruise. We're going to the Bermuda Triangle. We're going to look at haunted pirate outings in October. Check that out.
Cruise through the Bahamas as well, I think we are.
Yeah, that's true. Nice time of the year to do that. Anything else? That's it.
Actually, we're probably also want to talk about our free ticket drawing.
Oh, okay.
Randy.
Go ahead.
Yes, if you'll just send us an email to, what is it, World the Unexplained Gmail?
Yeah, worldtheunexplained@gmail.com.
At gmail.com. And in the subject heading, write, Out of Darkness Tour ticket, and register through the email for our free ticket drawing that we're having. Please, only one email per person, one email per household. Because if you send us multiples, you're only going to get in there one time. It's not a multiple person drawing.
That's a good point.
Just send us the email.
Okay, and then we'll pick one of those and bling free ticket.
That's right.
I know I said the word bling, but anyway. Okay, back to you, Wade. Now the next question I think you suggested, and it's a good one. What is the nature of the zombie? What is the mindset of the Haitian people of the zombie?
It's so important to understand that, so you get this formula for preparation of drug, all drugs are firmly rooted in culture, so you have to understand what is a zombie within the mindset of the Haitian reality.
Right.
And in the book, The Serpent and the Rainbow, the thing I think that is sort of wonderful about that book is that it's it was my first book, and it was sort of this innocent unfolding of this incredible mystery, And so, the first phase is I get hold of the formula of this preparation, but then you have to ask, what is a zombie? Now, part of asking that is, asking what is voodoo? I mean, where did we get this idea of voodoo as a black magic cult? Where did we get this idea that it was all about sort of, sorcery,
Yeah.
It's interesting. If I asked you to name the great religions of the world, and this is what I had to do when I went to Haiti. I'd worked at that point 3 years in the Amazon, studying shamanism, studying coca, doing a lot of interesting investigations. But I never in the Amazon had available to me what was made available to me within 24 hours of arriving in Haiti, and that was truly a window wide open to the mystic. And, I always felt like that line when I first went to Haiti from that Bob Dylan song, there's something happening here, but you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones?
Right.
I mean, I felt myself inside this vibrant, pulsating world where people, confronted by material scarcity, adorn their lives with their imaginations. I mean, it was the most interesting culture I'd ever seen in my life.
Very cool.
And of course, I had to ask the question, where did this bias about voodoo come from? I mean, if I asked you to name the great religions of the world, what would you say? Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever. There's always one continent left out, sub-Saharan Africa. The assumption being black people had no religion. Well, of course they did. And all voodoo is a distillation of very profound religious ideas that came over from the ancient continent during the tragic diaspora of the slavery era and became sown in the fertile soil of the New World. And voodoo is not a black magic cult. It's a very democratic religion in the sense that the believer not only has direct access to the divine, he or she becomes a god. And it's basically a religion in which there's a living dialogue between the living and the dead, whereby the living give birth to the dead become the multiple spirits of the pantheon, the spirits then become the expressions of the Godhead. And at the same time, in this quintessentially democratic faith, even the dead must be made to serve the living. To serve the living, they must become manifest. To become manifest, they must return to the earth, summoned by the power of the drums, the songs, the chants, to momentarily displace the soul of the living, so that for that brief shining moment, the person in a state of spirit possession becomes the god.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, Wade. We got a caller.
We got a caller.
Go ahead, D.
Hi, caller. You're on the show. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Do you really believe any of that, Wade? Come on now.
Oh,
yeah, Scott.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Fine. How you doing, man?
How you doing, Wade?
Hey.
You sound electric, Scott.
Yeah, man. You got some very feedback.
Calling from a phone booth in a dance club somewhere. We know you, Scott.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm up here in this hotel in Raleigh, and my internet service doesn't work. So I had to use dial-up, and it just buffers really bad, and so I can't really hear anything. So I'm sorry if I ask a question that's already been asked before, but I'm going to sue him when I'm done here.
If you can't hear the show, we're doing a great job then.
Oh, yeah. I'll
Hey, wait a minute. Hold on, D. Cut him off. Okay.
Wait, I've just got to know, what about people that have only seen the film, The Serpent and the Rainbow, if they compared it to your book, what are some of the key differences? Have you guys asked this yet?
Well, Scott,
No, we haven't gotten
a great story. I mean, when Hemingway said, when you sell a book to Hollywood, you should start off in Arizona, drive to the California state line, throw your book over, and go back to Tucson and have a drink. I was pretty young and pretty naive, and they told me that Mel Gibson was going to play the leading role. In fact, they offered him more money than he'd ever gotten for a movie, but he was a devout Christian, so he wouldn't do the voodoo movie. And then I had asked for Peter Weir, the great director, and I always thought the film should be sort of a year of living dangerously. And of course, he had just done Mosquito Coast, and he didn't want to do another film in the tropics. Long story short, they got to Wes Craven. Now, Wes is a great guy, and Wes really wanted to make a serious movie, but the problem is that once they filmed it, and they went to great lengths to make it authentic, filming, it was an incredible scene, filming in Haiti in the immediate wake of the Duvalier Revolution, and, but when they got back to Hollywood, and the test audiences said, wait a minute, where's the horror? So the producers basically, I think, screwed Wes, and they screwed me, and not David Ladd, the producer. David was great, but the other producers came along and sort of basically said, well, what are you talking about? You got voodoo, you got zombies, you got Wes Craven, it's got to be a horror movie. And so I think that's what ruined the film. And there's talk of a remake in Hollywood, actually, which is kind of interesting. But, as a writer, as a scholar, as an anthropologist, I always remember what William Faulkner said when he was asked what he thought what Hollywood did to his books, and he just pointed to his bookshelf and said they did nothing to my books. I mean, the book The Serpent and the Rainbow continues to sell thousands of copies a year. It's still the most, I think, just and fair and celebratory examination of the beauty of voodoo. And it takes, the wonderful thing about the book is that it takes this phenomenon, the Haitian zombie, that had been used in a kind of explicitly racist way to denigrate a people, and it makes sense out of it, and it shows that it had a purpose within the culture. I mean, if I ask, why do we have this idea of voodoo being evil or dark? Well, the answer really is that the U.S. Marine Corps occupied Haiti in the 1920s for about 20 years, and everybody above the rank of sergeant got a book contract, and those books had the names like, and most of these Marine Corps guys were, of course, from the South during the era of Jim Crow. And don't forget that Haiti was this really always a threat to America in the sense that it was the only independent black country for 100 years.
Right.
It used to buy shipments of slaves destined for the American South and grant them their freedom. American history would have been different because, of course, Haiti, during the time of the French colony, was the richest jewel of an imperial age. I mean, 2/3 of the world's coffee crop, 163 million pounds of sugar, 4,000 ships sailing every year. And when the slaves rose up, the only rebellion that was successful from any slave society, Napoleon, at the height of his power, dispatched the biggest expeditionary force ever to sail from France. And its mission was twofold. It was to go to the colony of what is now Haiti, quell the noxious slave rebellion, and then proceed to New Orleans, proceed up the Mississippi River, hem in the expanding 13 colonies, and reestablish French domination in a continent only 30 years before the Treaty of Paris in 1763 to become British North America. Now, believe me, had the Haitian slaves not fought off the French in Haiti, you guys would be speaking French west of the Mississippi. And so, but so that's the sort of history of it, and so my job really became, okay, so what is a zombie? What does it mean? Where did we get this idea of notion of voodoo being bad? Well, it came from these books, which had names like Cannibal Cousins, Black Baghdad, Voodoo Fire in Haiti, A Puritan in Voodoo Land, The Magic Island, The White King of Laguna. There are dozens of these books, all filled with children bred for the cauldron, pins and needles and dolls that don't even exist, zombies crawling out of the grave to attack people, and those gave rise to the RKO movies of the 40s, Night of the Living Dead, Zombies on Broadway, Zombies of the Stratosphere, The White Zombie Slave. And all of these books basically said to the American people, during the 1920s, in the era of Jim Crow, that any country where such abominations occurred could only find its redemption in military occupation. And the truth is that that voodoo got its black name at that period. But voodoo is not a dark religion. It's simply the religion of West Africa.
Right.
So
but it's not the right religion. But I'm not going to get in on my
No, you're not, Scott.
things, guys. I'm going to go. You take care of it from here. Wade, it's nice talking to you. I've got a bar exam to pass tomorrow.
Okay.
You guys have fun. Take care. Thank you for your time, Wade. Guys, see you later.
Okay, good luck, Scott.
Bye-bye.
So, fellas, back to this question of what does a zombie mean to the Haitian people? I was talking about voodoo, and I mean the key essence of the voodoo faith is this idea that at death the physical and spiritual components of the individual dissociate, and in a proper death, the part of the spirit that creates personality and willpower and identity goes beneath the great water, and then ritualistically, a year and a day later, it's reclaimed by a positive priest, and in a great ceremony, brought up from beneath the world of the invisibles, and it's put into a little vessel, which goes into the temple. And in time, that spirit, which has been reclaimed from a particular individual, and therefore for a family from a particular ancestor, becomes part of the vast ancestral pool of energy.
Right.
And out of that pool of energy emerge the archetypes, which are the spirits of the voodoo pantheon, the multiple expressions of the Godhead. And yet in this quintessentially democratic faith, even the dead must be made to serve the living. To serve the living, they must become manifest. To become manifest, they must return, summoned by the power of this music, the drums, the chants, to momentarily displace the Tibonage, the little good angel, which is the soul of the individual, so that for that brief shining moment the person becomes actually a god. And that's why Haitians always say, and Africans do too, you white people go to church and speak about God, we dance in the temple and become God, because indeed the Haitian walks in and out of the spirit realm with an ease and impunity that has always astonished the ethnographic observer. They actually become the god, and that's why you see, whether in Benin and Togo, as I've explored there, or in Haiti itself or elsewhere in the Americas where African culture is so strong, these incredibly theatrical gestures, people eating glass, people handling burning coals with impunity, an extraordinary example of the mind's ability to affect the body that bears it when catalyzed during a state of extreme excitation. I mean, I have watched in ceremonies throughout Haiti people taking in trance burning embers the size of a small apple, red-hot coals, putting them into their mouths, spraying the sparks over the temple, and nothing seems to harm them. It's incredible. And I've got a PhD from Harvard. I'm not easily swayed by this stuff, but I've seen it with my own eyes.
Wait, sorry to interrupt you. We've got another caller.
Sure.
Caller, you're on the air. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Caller, you're on the air. What's your question?
Hi, Wade. This is Chris from Atlanta, calling from Kernersville. You touched on this briefly a moment ago about the fact that the Western society pretty much has a dark or a skewed view of voodooism. Typically, we associate things like zombieism, torture, voodoo dolls, things like that. However, I did notice that in flipping through your book, Light at the Edge of the World, you have one really fantastic photo where the subtitle is a voodoo priest creates a healing potion. And what I was wondering is, what are the general aspects that we wind up not hearing about that these people do? I mean, do they handle marriages? Do they handle general disputes? Or what is that?
It's a wonderful question. You know, that's such a great question. It's Chris, right?
Yeah.
All of these religions. I just gave a lecture at the National Cathedral today here in Washington, and I said every religious structure should have outside a billboard that says important is true. In other words, what is religion but the quest to understand the inexorable mystery that death represents? All of these religious ideas are just attempts to find ways to make sense of sensation, to find order in a universe that may have none, to allow us to find comfort in the inevitability of death. And so voodoo is just another worldview. It's another religious idea, and so this idea that it's negative or that it's harmful is just erroneous. It's just an attempt to figure out, live and what happens to us when we die. And so, you know, there are reasons why voodoo has been particularly disrespected, but fundamentally it's just trying to answer that question.
Well,
Right, okay, well.
you have anything else, Chris?
No, I think that was pretty much it. Thank you very much, Wade.
You bet, Chris.
All right.
Excellent.
See you, Chris.
Okay. Now, we got about 6 minutes.
Well, let's go back to the whole question of what a zombie is.
Yes, let's do that.
Because, you know, when I was talking about, okay, that sort of sacred cycle of life, rebirth, which represents, okay, so I die, my spirit is reclaimed, it goes into the vessel, it becomes part of the ancestral pool of energy. Out of that pool emerge the archetypes, which are the spirits of the pantheon. That's kind of the sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth. For a Haitian, what a zombie is not someone who's been poisoned. It's someone who's had their soul stolen by sorcery. I mean, to ask why there's sorcery in voodoo or African religion, frankly, is to ask why there's evil in the universe. And the answer is similar to the answer Lord Krishna gave in a very different context in Hindu faith when he said, why is there evil in the universe to thicken the plot? In other words, most religions have a notion of light and darkness. We have it in Christianity in the image of the fallen archangel who becomes a devil and the Christ child who is the Son of God. And the whole point of religions giving form to dichotomy, to dualism, to the opposition of good and evil, is to create a kind of theatrical moment whereby the struggle can be made manifest, such that always good wins out over evil. And voodoo is very much like that. And so what is a zombie by the Haitian belief? A zombie is an individual whose soul has been stolen by sorcery, such that it breaks that sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth, right? And so that's exactly why the fear in Haiti is not of zombies, as those dreadful movies would imply, but of becoming a zombie, because if you are a zombie, you're cast in a state of perpetual purgatory. And that becomes interesting. So the other question in all this is, how do we understand how the poison works, you guys? Because one of the things about it is obviously this folk preparation is not made by a modern pharmaceutical company. The biogenesis, or the origin of the poison in these fish, for a long time was not understood. We now know that it's probably a vector dinoflagellate that brings the toxin to the fish population. And this explains part of our confusion that we had. Do you need to go to break?
No, we were kind of wondering if you could put that in layman's terms.
Okay, well, let me think. Okay, one of the curious things about these poisonous fish is the poison is not always constant. It varies tremendously from population to population, from locality to locality, from female to female, depending on her ovulating cycle. In other words, it's not like you can go down to the seashore in Haiti, pick up a species of this fish, and know that you've got a certain concentration of this curious drug, tetrodotoxin.
Right, okay.
The drug varies in concentration tremendously. Now, the reason for that is, as I said, is that no one, when I first was doing the research in 1982, no one understood where the drug came from in the fish. Now it's pretty much understood that the drug comes into the fish by the fish being polluted or poisoned, if you will, by eating dinoflagellates, which have the drug in them. That's one theory, at least. The most important point, though, is that this by definition was not a drug made by a modern pharmaceutical lab. It's not like the sorcerers going down to the beach, grinding up some fish, and giving you the kind of specific dosage that you would expect from your pharmacy for a drug. In fact, we knew that 50% of the time the fish were non-toxic. So here was a dilemma. How did the belief system insulate the phenomena and rationalize failures and emphasize successes? In other words, what happens if, a guy goes down, makes a poison, it's got no toxicity to it? What happens then to the belief? Well, that was a big puzzle for me until I understood that from the Haitian point of view, the point of view of voodoo, the poisonous fish has nothing to do with it. And this is really important, they believe that the making of a zombie is fundamentally a magical act. in which the sorcerer captures, through sorcery, the little good angel or the soul of the individual. Now, in voodoo, the human being has two kinds of souls. The gros bon âge, which is a sentient life force, the animate force within the individual that allows a person to be alive. All living beings share the same gros bon âge, but every individual being has a little good angel, and that little good angel makes a personality. And the Haitians believe that the creation of a zombie is a metaphysical act whereby the sorcerer captures the soul of the living, and that's what breaks the sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and that's why a zombie appears to be catatonic, because it's a person without will, without identity, without personality, because those parts have been stolen from them.
Okay, Wade, we're going to have to run to that last break, not the last break, the middle of the show break.
Yeah.
So we'll talk to you.
Keep that thought and come back.
Remember when paranormal radio used to be open to New Age ideas and every possible form of spiritual enlightenment?
It's a religion based on the understanding of consciousness, the understanding of nature, in particular fertility laws.
To my spirit guides are those who have passed over. And, I've always been able to see colors around people, which I've known now to be called auras.
Maybe coming to the close of one kind of psychic life, and I very much believe that this was what the Maya were really trying to talk about.
Well, we're not putting up with that. World of the Unexplained. Conservative paranormal talk. Big on God, big on guns, with your hosts Jay Scott and Trent Lackey. Heard Mondays, live from 8 to 10 Eastern on Planet Paranormal Radio.
Hey, welcome back to World of the Unexplained. We're here with Wade Davis. If you guys have any questions for him, you can call in at 1-877-722-7382 or 1-877-SCARE-YOU-2 or locally 336-996-1596. And for you people that are having problems getting into the chat room, if you will go to omnisound1.net and log back in or re-register for the chat room, you should be able to get in on the chat room by that way.
Okay. Now, let's finish up what a zombie really is. Go ahead, Wade.
Well, the thing is, so what a zombie is by folk belief is someone who's lost their soul. And what makes this interesting is that the poison, of course, is not consistently made. The fish, the levels of toxin vary tremendously. And so the question becomes, what happens if a sorcerer, for example, gives a victim a dose which is sub-threshold or a dose which is excessive and actually kills them? How do they rationalize failures and emphasize successes? Well, it turns out that from the Haitian, the voodoo point of view, all the poison is, there are two kinds of death in voodoo. Natural deaths called from God beyond the reach of sorcery, and then unnatural deaths. So, if I give a preparation to somebody that, for example, physically kills them by scientific terms, I can say that it was a call from God beyond the reach of my sorcery. If, on the other hand, I give them a sub-threshold dose that does nothing to them, I can say that my malevolent spell to capture their soul was negated by a positive priest, and that's why nothing happened. But the interesting thing is how the belief system mediates the phenomenon and allows the perpetrator of the deed to rationalize failures, emphasize successes, and therefore the belief system is protected in its integrity. The final, if you think of three phases of this, one was, is there something to this formula? Second, what does the zombie mean? The third and perhaps most interesting line of inquiry was, well, who controls this? Why is it being done?
Right.
And in all of my research, I was constantly coming up against these secret societies, the Bizango Champuel, which are the most powerful arbiter of social and political life in Haiti. And there was a precedent for it, because we knew that in equatorial West Africa, secret societies operating beneath the level of the nation, for sure, beneath the level of the tribe, were the most powerful arbiter of social and political life. And we knew from the ethnographic literature about West Africa that these societies had both a symbolic and executive function. They had judicial bodies. They had sanctions. They had criminal criminal processes. They punish people, and the punishments generally were toxins or poisons. And it turns out that was exactly what was going on in Haiti. The more you looked into the case of Claverius Narcisse, you realized that he was not an innocent victim. He was an individual who had violated all of the traditions of his community,
right?
Selling land from underneath people, violating children, et cetera, and it became clear that this man had not been an innocent victim, but he was deliberately identified and punished by the tribunal of the secret society. And that was sort of the last phase of my research, and I actually became the first non-Haitian that I know of ever to be actually initiated into the Bizango Champuel and become part of the secret society, and that's how I did the research.
Very, very interesting. I'd like to
give you
talk
a sense of what that meant.
Yes.
By the way, I would write these applications for funding to the National Science Foundation, and these Haitian scholars or people would review the applications and would say, great project, but Davis must be told that if he does this, he'll be killed. I mean, that was
wow.
That was a perception that this work had.
Wow. So how did you avoid, getting killed?
Getting killed, yeah.
Because I didn't ever think it was, I think they were wrong. And believe me, I had a family. I wouldn't have done anything. I didn't have a family then, but I was not about to kill myself. No, I think it was all exaggerated. It was all part of the sort of mania of fear about this society. And,
right.
Whenever I was in Haiti, and this gets back to one of the questions you guys wanted to ask me, how did I get this information? People were always saying to me, what kind of person are you? Because I defied what, I had a lot of research, a lot of experience at that time as an anthropologist of, how do you find the gestures, the symbols that allow you to break down the barrier that exists by definition between yourself and the people with whom you find yourself living as a guest. I mean, there's always this Indiana Jones thing that sort of suggests that, the way you get inside these other societies, is through bravado. Well, that's not how it really happens. It's really about empathy, love, the same skills, the same things that would make me welcome at your house at Thanksgiving are the skills that, allow you to break down the barriers with another people, a willingness to sleep beside people in the stony ground, eat what they eat.
Yeah.
But the point is that the link that I made to the secret societies really came there were some very dramatic moments. The moment when I first got the poison, and then there were later moments, for example, when I was investigating the secret society. I'll give you one sort of anecdote that will give you a sense of how this work went. Marcel Pierre, the sorcerer, or the Bokor, the negative priest, who had first provided me with the formula of the drug, had been described by the BBC as the incarnation of evil. He was nothing of the sort. He was a wonderful man. And we became, after 2 years, very good friends. But his wife was dying of uterine cancer, and I had been buying blood for her at this corrupted Duvalier health clinic. And we were both very frustrated. And I drove him back to a crossroads where he could get a tap-tap or a bus back up to his community at Saint-Marc. And then I got a flat tire. And for one moment, I looked completely like a ordinary American tourist. I bathing suit on, and these guys started to fix my car tire, and I said to them in Creole, I said, I've got no money, pagin kob, and they said, qui qualité blanc sayo, and which means, what kind of white person are you? You've got no money, and so then there was sort of a kind of a theatrical scene, and they grabbed my watch and everything, and I was in such a foul mood that I just reached out to the hand of this kind of perpetrator of this mini riot, and I gave him with my hand the secret society handshake, which just completely shocked him. And then he pulled back, and he said to me again, qui qualité blanc sayo, and then we started laughing, and then he said, nous gain gros bagay ce soir. We got a big thing happening tonight, and it turns out, right by chance, where my car broke down, there was a secret society temple just below it.
Oh, wow.
And so I went back that night, and for the first time ever going to a secret society gathering, I went unescorted by a powerful ally or a voodoo priest. And so I was welcomed very graciously, and the beginning of all secret society gatherings is a standard voodoo ceremony, the invocation of Legba, the spirit of communication, the standard rhythms of the voodoo drums, the quite benign nature of the voodoo faith. But then you suddenly, at midnight, you hear the whip cracked, the symbol of the successful revolution against slavery. You hear the conch trumpet blow, which of course was the sound that echoed over the northern plains of Haiti and heralded the revolution that unburdened the people from the shackles of slavery in the 18th century. And then suddenly there's a call that goes out in the dust of the temple. Soldiers of the night change skins, and everybody disappears in the darkness of these into the inner areas of the temple, and they suddenly come back transformed in these fantastic red and black uniforms.
Wow.
Almost like KKK uniforms, big hood bonnets and everything. And
Right.
Meanwhile, the musicians have changed, and the drums have been changed, and the drums go over on the side, and the whole beat of the music changes, and there's a staccato, almost pulsating rhythm that sounds like machine gun fire, and suddenly the people have gone from being individuals to being agents of the secret societies of within the hierarchy of the society, all with their own roles. And at this point, I was suddenly, 4 guys came to me and dragged me across the temple and flung me into a door into the darkness, and I tumbled over the ground and looked up, and there were about 10 members of the secret society, presidents, looking down on me, very stern.
Wow.
And,
Did that?
and I was sitting there, and I had to do something, and they what they wanted to know is what I knew, and they tested, or they weighed, as they say, my knowledge, the secret handshakes, the iconographic elements, the passwords, all these elements of these societies. And incidentally, these societies were so feared. That's why people were so concerned that I was doing this work, because these societies were, of course, the fountain to which Duvalier Sr. went to create the so-called dreaded Tonton Macoute.
I was about to ask that question, but go on.
Yeah,
though.
but anyway, so then here I am, and very quickly I exhaust everything I know, which is on the one hand too little and also too much. And there's an incredibly awkward moment. I'm there completely by myself, and I've got to do something. And at all these ritual gatherings, there's always a human skull with a candle burning on top of it beneath the potomiton, which is the kind of the axis mundi, the pillar of the temple. And there's always a bottle of raw alcohol, which is not drunk as much as blown as a libation to the spirits. And but it is raw alcohol, so I had to do something to break this kind of tension. And so I grabbed the bottle of alcohol and I poured it all over my body, and then with a candle, I lit myself on fire.
You did what?
Wow.
I lit myself on fire.
You lit yourself on fire?
Yes. I mean, it's not very dramatic. It's just what you used to do with lighter fluid when you were a kid, right? But then my whole body was on fire, and then I on fire, I offered my hand. My whole arm was aflame, and I offered it to the president to shake it again with the secret handshake. And they just started cracking up laughing, and they just loved it. And I suspect to this day that gesture has been incorporated into the ritual of that crossroads.
That sounds pretty dramatic to me. That's a lot of bravado.
Yeah. And then after that, I couldn't literally drive north without someone flagging me down at that crossroads and getting me down to the temple.
Oh,
Man.
wow.
Now, I guess I was going to go into that question. I mean, at some point in the show, and I'd kind of like to ask that. Now, we know that Haiti, up until 88, I guess, was under the grip of tyrants, what they call Papa Doc, Francois Duvalier, and his son, Baby Doc. And if these Bazongo, these secret societies, have such fear and such authority within the village, I mean, it would seem almost certain that, these political dictators would want to use their their clout.
The Duvaliers. I mean, the interesting thing is these secret societies were not. They weren't mafias. I mean, what it is that during the slavery era, a lot of slaves escaped, and they formed these communities called maroon communities. Jamaica, the same thing. And during the slavery era, they were essentially guerrilla forces, isolated in the mountains, fighting against the French. And then when the revolution happened, and in the wake of the success of the establishment of the only independent black country, save Liberia, which was a kind of a fictive device of American foreign policy, the role of those communities, which organized themselves before the revolution along the lines of secrecy which had come from Africa, was transformed in the wake of the revolution into a new protective role to protect the rural peasantry from the urban elite. And the urban elite, this is a great story of Haiti, is a schism between the mulatto elite, who during the French time enjoyed all the privileges of French citizenship, including the ignoble right to own human beings. The mulatto elite spoke French. They were Roman Catholic. They sent their children to Europe for recreation and educational. And there was a huge schism between them and the rural peasantry, which are absolutely African in orientation. I mean, the Creole is not bastardized French. It's French vocabulary truncated to fit the meter of African speech.
Right.
The rural Haiti, the descendants of the 500,000 slaves, were another reality. And so the secret societies were really a powerful force to protect that major part of the Haitian reality. Now, Duvalier, Francois Duvalier, who is remembered as this vicious dictator, was, of course, that, but he was also a rather interesting man in historical terms. He was the first Haitian ever to go to American medical school, and during the 1920s, when the Marines occupied Haiti, he was personally responsible for eliminating the disease yaws, from a disease of nutrition, from the country.
Well, that's right.
But even as he did that, he couldn't drink lemonade on the porches of his colleagues because of the color of his skin. He developed a hatred of white people. He was also, in addition to being a doctor, he was a published ethnographer. And he and a famous man, Jean Price-Maz, a hero of Haiti, wrote a series of academic papers in the 30s and 20s that basically said, what is our heritage? Is it French or is it African? And when he ran for president in 1957, he was the first presidential candidate in 100 years to say voodoo was a legitimate religion. The Americans thought they could use him as a pawn. He made the voodoo temples his campaign headquarters. He totally understood what the traditional structure was of Haiti. And so when he became president, and he couldn't trust his own army because it was full of sort of what he thought were co-opted bourgeois elite, and in fact there were 17 coups d'etats against him. Many of them orchestrated by Americans, incidentally.
That's no surprise.
He needed to create his own force, and he created something called the Volunteers for the National Security, the Tonton Macoute. And the Tonton Macoute, Tonton means uncle, Macoute means shoulder bag. These were just, it was a folkloric idea that if you misbehaved, your uncle would take you away. Overnight he created this militia that replaced the army and became his fundamental support. Where did it come from? He went to the secret societies because he said that voodoo was legitimate. And of course, he became crazy. He manipulated voodoo. He used it for his own ends. But that's the genesis of the power of his rule.
Well, I guess for a follow-up question, I don't know this for sure, but were the same secret society that Duvalier had used to abuse his power, were they the same organizations that would have inevitably led for Baby Doc to be kicked out of the country? Or is that something entirely different?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, Baby Doc, one of the things that was really lucky in my timing, if you will, is that people often ask why I was able to do this. I mean, part of it was that no one had gone down there and simply innocently looked for the formula, the preparation. The other thing was that traditionally voodoo was never a secret religion. It was a religion that had certain secrets, of course, like many religions do, but it was driven underground by the bourgeois opposition. And then one of the things that Francois Duvalier did is that he because voodoo and the secret societies and the temples were his foundation of strength, because he did say it was legitimate religion, he suddenly, brought and legitimized voodoo, and it sort of came out of its shadow into stark profile. And by the time Baby Doc came along, it was like almost radical chic to be a voodooist, And so it was very much out in the open for that brief window that I went down and did my research. And the other element of that is that, why did not some other anthropologists sort of solve this problem of the zombie? Well, one of the reasons is that in those books I referred to in the 1920s, many of them written by Marine Corps sergeants and officers, that were so detrimental or so negative about voodoo, zombies had been such a key element of those narratives that the whole subject of serious research, and those books were anathema to serious scholars, because during the 1950s, there were also all these really serious scholars from Yale and other universities looking at the wonder of the Haitian peasant society. And for those scholars, these books with their incredibly bizarre stories of zombies were an embarrassment. They were anathema. And so as a result, the entire area of the zombie became kind of forbidden for serious academic research because it had been so associated with these other books. And so I was just fortunate as a non-expert, as just a botanist from Harvard, a kid who had worked in the Amazon with shaman, to parachute in without judgment. And so I was able to be not worried about the fact that I wasn't supposed to be studying zombies, and it was just waiting for someone to discover these things. It wasn't my doing, really. It was really a question of academic neglect. And let's just maybe we could move on, because it's
true.
We've talked so much about Haiti and zombies and everything. Right now I work as a National Geographic explorer and resident.
Right. Exactly.
This was something that happened a long time ago.
This 20 years ago. My mission in life is to celebrate the wonder of the ethnosphere. What I mean by that is a cultural web of life. The most powerful statistic around today, with the possible exception of global warming, is the fact that, when you guys were born, there were 6,000 languages spoken on Earth. Now, a language is not just a body vocabulary or set of, grammatical rules. It's a flash of the human spirit. It's a vehicle through which the soul of every culture comes in the world. Every language is an old-growth forest of the mind, a watershed of thought, an ecosystem of spiritual possibilities. And of those 6,000 languages, half aren't being taught to children. So we're living literally through an era where, by definition, half of humanity's intellectual, spiritual, psychological, social knowledge is being lost, and this is an incredible thing. We always have, thought that these traditional cultures are somehow quote unquote primitive, destined to fade away as if by some natural laws, if they're failed attempts at modernity, failed attempts at being us. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. In every case, these are dynamic, living peoples being driven out of existence by identifiable forces. And that whole idea that there's a world of us and there's a world of the primitive is a 19th century idea based on social Darwinian thought that, created this sort of notion of progress and a notion of a pyramid of success, which invariably put Victorian England on top of the ladder, or the top of the pyramid. Fortunately and mercifully, biologists have finally proven it to be true, something that philosophers and social scientists always dreamt to be true, is that we're all brothers and sisters. We're all cut from the same genetic cloth. Every human population shares the same raw mental capacity, the same intellectual acuity, and whether that genius is placed into technological wizardry, as has been the case in the West, or into, as is the case in, say, for example, Australia, amongst the Aborigines, into unraveling the complex threads of memory inherent in a myth, is simply a matter of choice and orientation. And the other peoples of the world are not failed attempts at being us. They're fundamental manifestations of the human heart. When asked the meaning, the fundamental question, what does it mean to be human and alive, they have responded with these 6,000 different voices. And those voices represent our human repertoire for dealing with the challenges that will confront us in the ensuing millennia. and this is so important, why did I study voodoo? Because I don't like injustice. I'm drawn to the beauty of culture as an anthropologist, and I'm drawn to expose biases that are unfair. Anthropologists are sometimes excused or accused of embracing a kind of extreme relativism, as if we say that every human behavior is okay just because it exists. Nothing could be further from the truth. Anthropologists never embrace an extreme relativism. We never. What we're saying is that our obligation is not to eliminate judgment, but to suspend judgment, so that the ethical or that the ethic, or we suspend judgment so that the judgments we're ethically obliged to make can be informed ones. So what we're trying to say is, no one would say that the Nazis, because they had a language and a religion and ideology, were okay in what they did. Of course not. But what we're saying is that you suspend judgments, so the judgments you're ethically obliged to make can be informed ones. We don't eliminate judgment. So, voodoo, seen as a black magic cult, actually, when revealed with knowledge, is shown to be something quite remarkable.
Okay, excellent. That's a very interesting point. We got to take our last break of the night. And I forgot to give out the numbers. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway.
Log on to www.theufostore.com and request a free UFO Store catalog.
Okay, back to World Unexplained. Last half hour. Guys, I'm sorry. I forgot to give you the numbers last time. They are 1-877-722-7382 or 1-877-SCARE-U2. Talk to Wade. Very interesting guy. A lot of cool experiences. The local number is 336-996-1596. And I'd like to issue just a very quick apology to our radio stations out west about the expletive. I forgot to prompt Wade. That's totally my fault. Okay.
All right. Let's talk about some of the things you're, that you're currently doing now.
Before we go into anything new, I got to know how you feel about asking for Mel Gibson and getting Bill Pullman.
Oh, for the movie.
Did you get that? Did you hear that, Wade?
Yeah, Bill's a great actor. He's a great friend of mine. This wonderful thing that came out of that movie was my friendship with Bill, and I think he's done some really courageous roles since then. I think he's a fantastic actor. I'm delighted that happened, because he's become such a good friend of mine.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay. I was just wondering why you would ask specifically for Gibson.
Well, I didn't ask for Gibson. I asked for Peter Weir. I was hoping
for
that
director.
The director,
I got you.
Then the producer came back. Well, they were all excited. They're going to try to get Mel Gibson, and they offered him $2 million, which is more money than he received for a movie up to that point. This is back in 86, 87.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just Hollywood.
Yeah,
that's all right.
That's true. Go ahead, Dee. What were you?
No, I wanted to talk about a little bit about some of the new projects you're working on now, and as far as your.
Well, the same stuff that I was doing. What you think about what was I doing in Haiti? I was trying to take this sort of religion and this phenomenon that had been really misunderstood and really denigrated in almost an racist way, and try to make sense of the sensation. And that's really what I always have done as an anthropologist, is try to understand the wonder of the other. And so as an explorer in residence at National Geographic, my mission, I've been there almost a decade, is really to try to help them change the way the world views and values culture, recognizing that, there's this amazing thing happening, which is that half of the languages, therefore half of the cultures of the world, are disappearing within a generation. That's an amazing thing. And, of course, how to address that, polemics aren't persuasive, politicians won't lead the way. We just feel that storytellers perhaps can, and our goal is not to try to suggest that people should be frozen in time like some kind of biological specimen, but to ask a more profound question: what kind of world do we want to live in, and how can we find a way that all peoples can say, for example, enjoy the benefits of modernity and technological innovation without that engagement having to demand the death of their ethnicity, because it's not simply a matter of human rights or certainly romanticism or nostalgia. it's really a matter of geopolitical survival, because one thing that anthropology has proven and does demonstrate is that culture is not trivial. You know, culture is not decorative. It's not feathers and bells. It's not what you wear.
Right.
You know, culture is a blanket of moral and ethical values that you insulate the individual with and keep at bay the barbaric heart that history teaches us lies just beneath the surface of the living. Culture is what allows us to make sense out of sensation, find order in a universe that may have none. It's culture that allows us to answer Abraham Lincoln's call when he said, let's always seek the better angels of our nature. And if you want to know what happens when culture is lost and the individual survives with their own kind of maniacal ideas, cast adrift from the comfort of community, the certainty of faith, cast forward perhaps onto the lowest rung of an economic ladder that goes nowhere, you only have to look at Al-Qaeda. Right. You only have to look at Mogadishu. You only have to look at Liberia, the Shining Path in Peru, the Maoists at the gates of Kathmandu, Pol Pot in the killing fields of Cambodia. You know, culture is not trivial. And so this complete kind of disintegration of the cultural sphere of life that you could perhaps call an ethnosphere as opposed to a biosphere, it's a matter of geopolitical significance. And so what my job is, okay, what do you do about that? We feel that the National Geographic, that with an audience of 250 million people each month, our best way of trying to deal with that is to tell stories. And what I mean by that is to take our audience to places around the planet where the beliefs or the practices, the rituals are so inherently dazzling that just to know about them is to come away amazed and hopefully come away with a new appreciation of the wonder of culture. So, for example, in the last year, I've made 6 films. A film on the history of psychoactive plants, a 2-hour special for the History Channel, a 3D IMAX film where Bobby Kennedy Jr. and I and our 2 daughters went down the Grand Canyon to speak about water issues and conservation in the American Southwest and in North America in general. Oh. And then a 4-hour film series called Light at the Edge of the World, where we really took these notions of anthropology and we went, for example, to Tibet and Nepal to do a piece on what we call the science of the mind. Why do we call it a science of the mind? Because what is science but the empirical pursuit of the truth? What is Tibetan Buddhism but a 2,500-year tradition of seeking an understanding of the nature of existence through empirical observation?
Right. Right.
The Buddhist monks said to me, it was incredible, they said, we don't believe that you went to the moon, but you did. You may not believe that we achieve enlightenment in one lifetime, but we do.
Right.
They said Western science is a major response to minor needs. You seem to spend all of your time trying to live to be 100 without losing your teeth or your hair. We spend all of our time trying to understand the nature of existence. Your billboards have naked children on them in underwear. Our billboards are prayer walls with sentiments praying for the well-being of all living beings.
Right.
And then we went to Peru to look at sacred geography. What do I mean by sacred geography? What does it really mean when a people believe the earth is alive and responsive to the human imagination? A kid raised in Montana to believe that a mountain is a pile of rock is going to have a different attitude toward that mountain than a kid in Peru raised to believe that mountain is a mountain deity that will direct his destiny. And the consequences in terms of the environment can be profoundly different. We went to the high Arctic to look at the Arctic art of survival. What does it mean to be a civilization with a technology so primitive that everything has to be derived from the cold, where there is no wood, there is nothing but slate and stone and small bits of wood that float up from the sea like flotsam, and that the survival as we went out on the land with the Inuit. The temperature was minus 80 Celsius, if you can imagine.
Good Lord.
No, I can't.
Hunting polar bear, minus 80 Celsius.
No, I can't imagine that cold.
Well, I got a question for you. When you mentioned your book, Light at the Edge of the World, I got a question from someone who wants to know when will prints be available, and where can they purchase prints that was in your book?
I would encourage everybody to contact my website's just about, it's been brought down, it's going back up again. But anyone who wants a print of any of these photographs should contact me directly at my email address, daviswade@AOL.com, or through the National Geographic website, which they can just sort of Google Wade Davis, Explorer in Residence, National Geographic Society, and just send me the inquiry. And within a month, I will have all the portfolio up online, and along with all the books, and people can. Yeah. The books are all available, of course, at Amazon.
Right. And I think you were working with another gentleman. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, about another website that has some of these pictures that are.
Well, we've got a website, Cultures on the Edge, but the new website's going to have all my photographs powerfully displayed and available for purchase.
Oh, okay, good.
Signed
good.
And everything else.
Oh, great.
Very cool. I guess, let's see, where do I have this? Okay, you're talking about this destruction of culture, and maybe the clash of two seemingly very different worlds. And I guess what my question is, you as an anthropologist, and you study this and you think about it a lot, and I'm sure you have some ideas. Where do you think it goes? I mean, what's the best case scenario for these cultures?
I think
what's the worst case?
That's a wonderful question, and since we're coming to the end of the show, it's a perfect place to sort of think about for a moment. You look at these things, half the languages of the world disappearing, climate change, loss of the rainforest. It can be very bleak, not to mention what's going on geopolitically. I mean, the Iraq War, you and I, we've been now talking for almost 2 hours. Well, every 12 hours in Iraq, the American people are spending $100 million. So,
wow.
In 2 hours, I'm not sure exactly what's been spent in Iraq, but you can do the math. And it can be very depressing. You can also look back and see the positive thrust of change. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, just getting people to stop throwing garbage out of the car window was a great environmental victory. No one spoke of the ozone or climate change or biodiversity. Now biosphere, biodiversity, the sense of the importance of maintaining both, it's all part of the vernacular of school children. I mean, think about this. 30 years ago, in 30 years, women have gone from the kitchen to the boardroom, blacks from the woodshed to the country club, gay people from the closet to the altar. I mean, change does happen, and it happens incredibly quickly. And what we really need to do is recognize, as Peter Matthewson said, that anyone who thinks they can change the world is probably wrong and dangerous. But as Margaret Mead said, the actual force of social change is the incremental accumulation of 10,000 small acts of the Spirit, acts of individuals. And so that's something that I find a lot of comfort in, is that, we just need to work together to find out and ask the fundamental question, what kind of world do we want to live in? And I think that the world that we want to live in is a world of diversity, not because diversity is something out of political correctness, but because diversity is poetic, and it's a fundamental indication of the way things are meant to be. And in terms of culture, it is our greatest strength. I mean, this is what is so important. Look, I mean, the fantastic thing, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is that biologists have finally proven it to be true what philosophers have always dreamt to be true. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all cut from the same genetic cloth. Now, our world that we celebrate, and all cultures are famously ethnocentric, fiercely loyal to their own interpretations of reality. I mean, the word barbarian comes from the Greek barbarous, meaning one who babbled, and if you didn't speak Greek, you didn't exist. The Aztec had the same notion, America's a funny place, because America is sort of famously culturally myopic, and we get nervous about that, but of course it makes sense, because we were settled by vagabonds who came over from Europe to get away from all that stuff. So it shouldn't surprise us that the president doesn't travel, or that 40% of congressmen don't have passports. I mean, this is kind of normal. But at the same time, and this is not a country that sought domination. In 1940, what country had the biggest army, Bulgaria, Portugal, or America? The answer is definitely not America. It was third. You know, this is a country that, through its sheer vitality, has found itself the most powerful, dominant country, sociologically, politically, economically, since Rome. I mean, even at the time of the Great War, of World War I, you know, I mean, Britain, the most powerful empire in the world, could barely get 125,000 troops across the Channel when France and Germany were facing each other in armies that numbered in the millions. I mean, we are so powerful, and yet at the same time we're insulated by our boundaries and by our affluence. I mean, America spends more money maintaining its lawns than India collects in federal tax revenue, a country with a billion people. Our Defense Department is bigger in budget than the entire economy of Australia. You know, we are wired for the internet. We can't imagine a world where 2 billion people get by on less than $2 a day, and where most of the world's not only not had to send an email, they've never had a phone conversation.
Wait, I hate to interrupt you. We've got another caller.
I wonder who it could be.
Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, this is Rich Anderson.
Oh, hey, Rich.
Oh, hey, Rich.
You remember me?
Yeah.
Listen, your visitor today, your guest tonight, is very interesting because he said he has done 6 movies lately. And the thing is, I've submitted proposals to 2 different TV channels, and one of them has come back and wants from me now partnership with a producer so that I can submit how much the budget is and how long it takes to make the movie. So they seem to be very seriously interested, and maybe Wade is interested in doing something with me because I have a very serious offer here to submit a project to a leading channel which is as prominent as National Geographic.
So, Wade, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I mean, I sent out my email. Why don't you send me an email? It's daviswade@aol.com.
David,
just send me a...
you're talking too much. I'm not that fast. David Wade at...
daviswade@aol.com.
Davis or David?
Davis.
Davis.
I have it here. I see it on the screen. Davis Wade, one word?
Yeah, one word at AOL.com.
Okay.
AOL.com.
Okay.
I send you an email. Could I call you?
Just send me an email.
I send you an email, and I give him my number because I think it might be interesting that we discuss the possibility of a cooperation.
Well, that would be interesting.
Do that.
Okay.
In fact, I have submitted also 3 different proposals to National Geographic, and I'm just waiting for an answer. I did that in December. They came back to me and asked me to sign documents and redo my proposal according to their guidelines, and I've done it. So who knows? Maybe we can do something.
Very good.
All right, Rich.
Okay, well, we got to let you go, Rich.
Yeah, it's okay. I just wanted to make the contact.
Okay,
all right, no
excellent.
problem.
Thanks.
Okay.
Have a good night, Rich.
Okay.
All right, Wade.
Well,
yeah.
There you go. Okay, Wade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Right. Well, it's 10 till. It's time to sort of create a synopsis here. You got about 5 minutes. Final word.
Well, I just wanted to thank you guys for letting me come on the show. I mean,
no,
these
thank
are
you for coming.
complicated stories and complicated issues, but it's fundamentally about all of us getting together and really asking ourselves what kind of world do we want to live in, and Margaret Mead, the great anthropologist, once said that her greatest fear was that as we sort of drifted toward this sort of blandly amorphous generic world, not only would the entire range of the human imagination be reduced to a more narrow modality of thought, but that we would wake up from a dream having forgotten that there are other possibilities of life. And my mission in life and all the books that I write, and I hope that some of your listeners will get onto Amazon and check out some of these books and the films, and our goal is just to try to say, hey, wait a minute, what we're losing here is so beautiful. I mean, one of the films we did is, we went sailing throughout the entire South Pacific with Polynesian navigators, and these were the navigators who settled the greatest culture sphere in the history of the Earth, 10 million square kilometers, tens of thousands of islands, flung like jewels upon the sea. And these navigators had no modern techniques whatsoever, in a system of dead reckoning where they could only know where they were going by knowing where they had been. They could name 250 stars in the night sky.
Wow.
They could sense the presence of distant atolls of islands beyond the visible horizon just by watching the reverberation of waves against the hull of their canoes. They could sit in the darkness of the canoes and distinguish 32 different sea swells moving through them, distinguishing weather patterns that were local from the deep pulses that radiated out from thousands of miles away in the ocean. I mean, this is just a body of knowledge, which is only one small example of the range of intuition and beauty and wisdom that human beings have figured out through all of our history. And why would we possibly want to live in a world in which these various voices have been silenced? It's inconceivable to me.
That's very well
Wow.
put. I honestly, I couldn't agree with you more.
So, can we look forward to seeing a new book coming out anytime soon?
Yeah, I've got a big book I've been working on for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a big book.
You have a title, date?
I don't have a title, and I
Okay.
can't really talk about it. but
Okay.
it's
Oh,
okay,
about,
that's no problem. Yeah.
It's kind of a bit of a departure, but it's an exciting book.
Okay,
Oh,
well,
good. Well,
you have to let us
keep
know
us out.
about it when
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
when
Well,
it's done
thanks
cooking.
so much for having me on. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
no, we appreciate you coming
Absolutely,
on.
Wade. It's been a decidedly unique pleasure
Oh,
to
yeah.
have you on.
Okay, good night.
All right,
Okay,
you have a nice
we'll
night,
see you
Wade.
later.
Bye. All right. Wow,
Wow.
that was really interesting.
Sure enough, man, it was heavy.
Yeah, I
very,
know.
very
We didn't
heavy.
even scratch the surface
No,
on some of that.
No,
at all.
absolutely not. I have a whole list of
I mean,
questions.
so do I. I didn't even get
I
into.
didn't get to ask them.
I mean, there's so much more stuff we could have gone into.
Yeah, we could have.
Wow. I mean, that was amazing.
Have you seen how many books he has on Amazon?
He's got a
lot.
ton of video aspect of what was going on in Haiti and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
this.
Well, and this book is really easy to read.
Oh,
I mean,
Serpent and the
really
Rainbow?
is. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because I perused, I killed 4 chapters in like 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Light at the Edge of the World is really cool too, and once again, the photography is really beautiful.
Oh yeah.
in it.
Well, and like
Yeah.
you said, he has that other website what he's doing with a I can't remember the other photographer's name, but it's I can't exactly remember what he called it. It was like Cultures, and but it has a lot of the same pictures that's in the that one book of Light at the Edge of the World, which it's
No,
it's
seriously.
really interesting.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's why we pay
That's
you the
why
big
we
bucks.
paid Chuck the big bucks.
Which
the
is
ball here, man.
Yeah,
That's
you are on
right.
the ball. We're all on the ball. Well,
I
not
wasn't
me.
trying to play you off, man, like the Oscars last night.
Yeah.
Oh,
the
Thanks a lot.
Oscars. I didn't watch them. I don't care.
I didn't either. That's
You
all
know,
right.
that's
Those 5
basically
years
how-
of my life I'll never get back. 5 years, time afterwards, it felt like
You had 5 years.
I don't know what Oscars you're watching
Yeah,
there,
no kidding.
buddy. But
If you'd watched them, you'd understand.
really, okay. Well, I did not. I was
Hey,
busy doing other more important
and again,
things.
guys, check out our website for outofdarknesstour.com.
Bill Sneblin, John Zappas, Al Prophet, Teresa Baines,
Laura Placeres.
Laura Placeres, us.
That's right.
We're like a little mobile circus, honestly.
That's right. And if you
Jay
guys
Scott,
want
who's
to
not
register for that free ticket drawing, just send us an email to worldyunexplained@gmail.com.
at gmail.com.
Yeah. And in the subject line, just put Out of the Darkness Tour, drawing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll pick them out of a hat.
We'll pick them out of a hat, and somebody will win
A free ticket.
A free ticket to the Out of Darkness Tour.
Yeah. Regular tickets are $50, and the special guest dinner package is $75.
And you get to have dinner with all of us.
That's right.
From the WO2 crew.
You got to see me eat. It's disturbing. Oh.
Not too disturbing.
No, I'm just
And then we also have our.
no, it really is disturbing.
And we've also got our paranormal cruise as
That's
well.
right. Paranormalcruise.com.
Paranormalcruise.com.
Going to Bermuda,
Yeah.
October. Oh yeah,
Cruising
That'll be
the Bermuda Triangle and a little bit of the Bahamas.
Visiting old pirate haunts. Come
Oh,
on, you got
yeah.
pirates in the Bermuda Triangle.
Go
Come
to
on,
that,
guys.
Go to that website, check it out, and
Yeah.
email the I guess, the travel agent, and you'll get
Yep.
a special price.
If you're coming from us, say we sent you. You know,
That's right. Let
you'll
them
see
know.
about it. Wow, what a good show. You know, I could probably.
Hey, what's
talk about,
who's coming up next week? There,
Hey,
Trent?
you know, that's a good point, D. You're kind of on the ball. You know, keep on talking because I'm trying to type
Let's go.
and do
Trent's
this at the
not
same time.
prepared.
You know, no, the thing, you know, honestly, yeah, okay, that's true. But I mean, the thing about it is, you know, I haven't had a computer for like weeks. You know what I mean? And
and you're still trying to learn that new one with the Vista on it, aren't you?
Gosh, listen, guys, Vista stinks. All right, avoid it. Yeah, Chuck.
It's like running Macintosh on
You know,
on your
it's
regular
totally distracting
PC.
me. Oh my gosh, what the heck is this? All right, look, I don't know who's coming on. Chuck, you think you hit that? Probably not.
What, who's coming on next?
Yeah, don't worry
We
about
got
it.
Cyril Weck coming up in the next couple.
Yeah, Cyril Weck's coming on. Oh shoot, After Death guy. Oh man, wow. Just think, this thing is falling apart quick. Come on, computer.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
you know,
we're having another technical problem.
maybe it's some kind of.
Gee whiz.
Yes, I am looking for World of the Unexplained Computer. Anyway,
wait, I think I've almost got it.
well, you got about like maybe a minute.
Maybe a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to
See, let's see
mention
how
our-
quick. Yeah, repeat that, please. Anyway, so great show. Wade Davis. I didn't know he set himself on fire. That's probably
Oh, that was amazing.
fantastically.
Could you imagine that?
I mean, well, there's 10 guys. I mean, that would probably be a little bit. I'd be a little bit bothered.
Oh man.
A little bit
yeah.
frightened. Okay, we got our guests coming up. Next week we have Pastor Harry. Oh, he's going to be a hoot.
yay,
After
Pastor
that,
Harry.
Dr. Raymond Moody, Life After Life. Beyond that, we have Randy Harrigan from the UFO Store, Angelo Moore, the Hillbilly Psychic, and then April 2nd, Dr. Cyril Weck. Looking forward to that one. Okay, we better.
That's probably good.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see
Scott's
what's
gonna
up.
hear this and kick our butt.
Yes, we got 20 seconds. We're gonna do this right. D, have you thought of a cool tagline?
Sure.
I
why
gave you
not?
2 hours, man.
Oh yeah.
2 hours for you to
Hey,
think about
this
it.
is D, your master of the phone lines.
Master of the phone lines.
Hey. You have to give me some more chance.
Yeah, this is Trent
Yeah.
Lackey. We're coming to you from Kernersville, North Carolina. Small town. We're talking about big things. Chuck.